Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. We'll just give it another minute or two to let people log in before we get started. Okay, I think we're ready to go. So welcome again, everyone, to our webinar entitled Eat Healthy and Be Merry. What a great topic as we get into the holiday season. And thank you to Rose Reisman for joining us today. Rose is an award-winning entrepreneur, caterer, author, and media personality, and not to mention a mother of four, grandmother of four, and as we were just chatting a second ago, the new mother of a fur baby, I guess people call them. So Rose is also a registered nutritional consultant with an MBA and has really taken her passion for healthy living and developed it into a multifaceted enterprise so that she is now known as one of Canada's leading authorities on the art of eating well and living well. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Rose. And just one added note, if you have any questions throughout today's webinar, please type it into the chat and we'll get to most of the questions at the end of the webinar. And happy to take as many as possible. Rose's presentations are always enjoyable and full of lots of information. So hopefully we'll get lots of questions. Thanks again, and over to you, Rose.
Thank you so much, Maureen. Always nice to see you. Thanks for that lovely introduction. During the last 30 years, my life really has been about food. And if you saw the slide before, Maureen, I was running a catering company, fresh and frozen food delivery. We even launched a kids program in the Toronto District School Board, and everything I did related to healthy living. And a lot of that came from my own family who suffered heart disease, diabetes. As I was growing up, I said, I want to live a healthier lifestyle. And that's really been my mandate for the last 3 decades. So it's the holidays. And we want to eat healthy and be merry. 'Tis the season. And you know what? You really can do both. How often do we look at anything from Thanksgiving to Christmas and go, oh no, it's an eating fest for the next 3 months? We all know that. But you honestly can still have tradition, break bread, enjoy family, and socialize, and still keep healthy while having indulgences. So we all know that the holidays can be indulgent. This brings nice memories: eggnog, prime rib, pecan pie with whipped cream or ice cream. I mean, I want you to enjoy all of that. But here's some interesting facts. We gained from Thanksgiving to New Year's about 1 to 3 pounds. Now, my mother used to always say, what's the big deal? I gain 1 pound a year. What's so wrong with that? It really isn't bad. The problem is, as we age, we tend to not lose the weight as quickly. And guess what? That weight adds up. And in 5 years, it's 10 pounds. And you can multiply from there on in. So that's why being somewhat careful during the holidays is that important. So, importance of eating healthy for seniors and as we age, and I'm a senior. First of all, we lack nutrition, often due to a poor appetite. Or we have a bigger appetite and we're gaining weight. Any of these 2 scenarios can lead to chronic disease, which is what we want to prevent as we're aging. To maintain health and strength, why? I mean, my life feels better when I feel stronger and I feel like I'm a good body weight. I'm more independent. I think I look and I feel younger because age is just a number. And that's what I keep telling myself every single day. And I don't feel that I'm the age I am, not that I'm going to tell you how old I am, but I feel much younger because I do feel strong. So just maintaining that strength, the health is so important as you age. It slows and prevents chronic diseases, diabetes type 2, heart disease, obesity, and definitely certain cancers. And also, you can reduce the amount of medication and even remove medication if you become healthier. Very good reasons. So we have something now called type 3 diabetes, and people always think I made a typo error. We know what type 2 diabetes is, but now they're showing that when we have high blood sugar, it damages vessels in our brain. And Alzheimer's is triggered by insulin resistance. So another reason that we should be careful of the sugar, the fat, and our weight. Maintaining, next slide, maintaining a healthy body weight. It's important for your cardio. It's important for respiratory, arthritis. I mean, arthritis always acts up when we're heavier. Our back, I know I have back problems. And when I was heavier many years ago, I definitely felt them much more. But not only that, maintaining a healthy body weight improves our immune system. We don't get sick as often. So that's another good reason that we want to keep a healthy body weight. And you can always speak to your doctor about exactly what that number is. Next slide. Now, preventing muscle and bone loss is key. One is osteoporosis. So keeping our bone mass strong is very, very important. Also, because if we fall, chances are we won't break a bone. I take my dog out every day. I'm now on my 5th dog. And I walk through the woods and I walk up hills and I occasionally take a tumble. My bones are strong. I get up. Now, yeah, maybe I'm lucky, but you stand a much greater chance of when you have that fall of not breaking a bone. Next. And protein is key. As we start to age, we start to lose muscle loss unless you work out a lot. And protein is key to building muscle mass. So what am I talking about here? You can see in the pictures. It doesn't have to be meat. It can be fish. It can be poultry. It can be vegetables. It can be nuts. There's many ways of getting good protein in your diet. But here's the key. Having protein just at dinner won't do it. You need protein throughout the day to keep your energy up and to continually build that muscle mass. So not just once a day, keep protein going all day long. Next slide. And dietary needs. You know, just looking at a generic picture like this, you see it, colorful, fruits, vegetables, grains, lean protein. This is ultimately what we want to be looking at, and I'm going to soon get into more specific dietary needs. Next slide. So we look at low sodium versus high sodium foods. Well, look, we all know that sodium is not great for us, and it tends to come much more in packaged foods, in frozen processed foods. We want to go low sodium. Now, here's something interesting, a little tidbit. If you put salt on your food at home, you've cooked your food from scratch, you put it on, you know how people, your children, your grandchildren, your friends might say, don't add salt, it's bad for you. That's a myth. That sodium that you add with your shaker at home is absolutely fine. It comes from the food you see there on the other slide, the chips, the jarred salsas, the canned food. That's what you have to be more careful of in terms of blood pressure. Next slide. Next slide, thank you. Low cholesterol versus high cholesterol. So we all know low cholesterol foods basically don't have animal fat. High cholesterol tends to be fried foods, hot dogs, more heavy and fatty meats, but you can get a lot of excellent low cholesterol foods by eating lean proteins, and as you see in the picture there, avocados, and I'll discuss other foods that are low in saturated fat as well. Next slide. Okay, next slide, sorry. Yeah, all right, so limiting animal protein. We've talked about this already, but it's very interesting. When you look at processed meats, when we say animal protein, I'm talking much more about beef, fatty beef. Processed meat, as you see there in the salami, there's an increased risk of cancer, heart disease, and dementia when we're eating processed meats. And that might even mean 2 slices of bacon a day, just a couple of ounces. So we want to really be careful of the animal protein we have. Next slide. All right, I think, let me see, I'm just seeing here if I have my slides right. Lower sugar versus high sugar desserts. Now, if you have willpower, by all means have dessert, especially during the holidays, but keep it small. Get a small little plate, have a small piece. If you know you don't have the willpower to resist that 12-layer cake, then what you want to go for is either an angel cake made mostly with egg whites, it's like a sponge cake, or a sorbet instead. And you can pick and choose. And often when you go to restaurants, you'd be surprised at how many times they have options that may not be on the menu. Next slide. Now, carbs. So, everybody's been out there carb bashing. Don't eat carbs, they make you fat, they're not healthy. Here's the thing, carbs are fantastic for you. Fiber, vitamins, minerals, it gives you the energy you need to sustain your day. Here's the issue, simple carbs are white flour carbs. So white flour, pretzels, white pasta, white bread, those are fine occasionally, but they're not going to give you the nutrients or the energy you're looking for. And they also have more empty calories, so you end up gaining weight. What we want to do is look at complex carbs, and you can see the whole grains there on the right. So please don't omit carbs, just be more selective. And when we're looking at vegetables, now you know that Thanksgiving dinner passed, but the Americans are celebrating it now. Christmas is coming. The mashed potatoes with the butter, the green bean fried onions look fantastic. But I don't have to tell you how high in fat, calories, saturated fat, those two are, whereas roasting vegetables are wonderful. I like to call vegetables nature's candy. If you pick the right vegetables, like you've got parsnips, sweet potatoes, they're so delicious, they do taste like candy. So remember, the darker the color, the better the vegetable is. Next slide. And solid fat versus healthy fats. Well, solid fats are what they are. You see it. You have butter, you have cheese. Those are the solid fats. And naturally, think about solid and what that does to your body. Ultimately, it starts to form plaque in your heart. So this is what can lead to heart disease and high triglycerides. You want the healthy fats, which is the extra virgin olive oil, the olives. Those are the fats that do not block your arteries. Next slide. So one of the key diets out there is called the Mediterranean diet. I love this diet. Mediterraneans have been known to have much healthier aging than we North Americans do. They're much healthier to an older age. Their lifespan is longer. It's a diet, if you look at it carefully, it's rich in fruits, vegetables, olive oil, beans, whole grains, and fish. They have 30% less heart and stroke disease than North Americans do, and also a much lower risk of dementia. So for a minute, if you want to take a look at that side do, you can see the pyramid. At the top is what the foods you want to be minimizing, and you see meat is right at the top, sugar, and at the bottom are carbohydrates, lots of grains, whole grains, and then nuts are in there, fish. That's the way you want to look at your plate, but we'll put that more into practice in a minute. Next slide. So the big question, everybody's going gluten-free today. So here's the thing, gluten can increase memory loss, especially from the simple carbs like the white flour, but gluten-free is not a healthier diet. Often when you buy something packaged like Enjoy Life has got cookies that are gluten-free. If you read the ingredients carefully, the calories are about the same, the fat is often more and there's more sugar, and they use white flours like tapioca flour or coconut flour. These flours are not any better for you than the white flours, and you better off go with complex carbs like whole grains, unless there is an allergy. But if if you want to cut out the white flour, by all means, but try some of the ancient grains like quinoa, spelt, buckwheat. Those are fantastic. Sorry, and spelt is not gluten-free, but buckwheat is. Next slide. So now we're going to go choose it and lose it. So you can, it's kind of simple, but let's see if you can guess all of these and make sure that they're right. You're going to tell me which are better for you. Next slide. So You start your buffet or your dinner and you see crudités. Those are just nice, fresh, raw vegetables with a salsa or a light or a hummus versus creamy dips and chips. So I bet you know what the answer is there. The chips are good, but you know how addictive chips and dips are. The salt, the fat, it's so addicting you can't stop at one or two. Chances are you won't finish that whole plate of veggies, but it's going to fill you up way more. Next slide. Pretzels and popcorn. Now, pretzels, as I say, it's really not a lot of nutrients. They are salty, but they're better than the fried foods. Okay, when you eat the fried foods, there's usually digestive upset, especially as we age and weight gain. Popcorn is a fantastic treat, but I would be careful of buying the packages that say smart food. They have a lot of cheese and oil in there. There are tons of calories. They are delicious. The best bet you can do is make some popcorn at home on the stove or in your microwave in a paper bag. All you do is take a handful of popcorn, throw it in a paper bag, fold it over, microwave for 2 minutes, and then add a little bit of your own seasoning or olive oil to it. It's absolutely delicious while you're watching the latest Netflix series. Next slide. And nuts. You know, the only problem with nuts, and I love nuts, it's really hard to stop at one, right? So the rule of thumb is a handful of nuts is 1 serving. Nuts are one of the healthiest foods as a protein, fiber, heart-healthy fats. These are fantastic and also brain-boosting properties. So be careful when you're having a drink, you're at a party, that you're not eating a whole bowl of nuts. Take a handful, be mindful, and you will find that that will fill you even before you start hitting the buffet table. Next slide. I don't have to tell you fresh fruit and vegetables versus fried wings and French fries. I know there's not much of a toss up there, but really, when you look at it, you really can enjoy yourself on those 2 slides as opposed to the fried foods. Leave the fried foods for when you're watching a great hockey game or a great baseball game. Next slide. So shrimp cocktail versus fried. Now, here's the thing. We all know shrimp is healthy, especially when it's poached like that or boiled. Got lots of protein. It's very, very good for you in terms of a lean protein. But here's the thing. People are concerned about the cholesterol in shrimp, right? Shrimp does have much more cholesterol than other white fish or salmon. Now, fried shrimp has a lot of cholesterol that you have to be worried about. When you're talking about dietary cholesterol, like from shrimp, a very clean, I call it meat or protein, it does not seem to affect your cholesterol in the same way. Now, if you're already on cholesterol medication, cholesterol runs in your family, then you'll want to minimize the amount of shrimp. But if you don't have issues, shrimp cocktail is fine. They've now shown studies that dietary cholesterol will not raise your bad cholesterol, your LDL. Next slide. Soups are just wonderful during this time of year. You know, I invite my whole family over. There's 14 on every Sunday night. And I have a soup to start every single meal, and the kids just look forward to it. But mine tend to be vegetable, tomato, or stock-based, okay? The minute you're dealing with cream-based, you're dealing with butter, you're dealing with cream, like not necessary ingredients. And be careful of soups when you order them in a restaurant or you buy them packaged, tons and tons of salt. Making a soup at home is wonderful, and don't be afraid to add that salt shaker. That's not going to hurt you. But also, soups help fill you up before indulging in the main meal. Next slide. So we look at baked sweet potatoes versus white. Now, I want you to know that white potatoes are incredibly healthy for you. So we're not going to bash potatoes. We're not going to bash our neighbors to the east. They're great. But once you make mashed potatoes and you add lots of cream and lots of butter, or you fry them, a lot of the nutrients go out the window. What's great about sweet potatoes is they contain antioxidants, but more important, a vitamin A that has been shown, especially as we age, to improve our immune system. So I'd say twice a week, I make sweet potato fries. I just put a little bit of maple syrup, a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, a little bit of sea salt, roast them up. They're like candy, really, really delicious. And they have a much lower glycemic index than the mashed potatoes, which means they don't raise your blood sugar quickly. Next slide. So green salad versus Caesar salad. Okay, Caesar salad, everybody loves. It's got anchovies and cheese and eggs and mayonnaise. What could be wrong? The only thing that could be wrong is, I term it better, heart attack on a plate. It is not the healthiest salad for you. You're hardly getting any greens when you take a look at it. You're better off having some dark greens. And remember, iceberg lettuce, not the most nutritious. Even romaine, so-so. You want to go for the spinach, the kale, the arugula. Those greens are great, and throw in every vegetable you have in your refrigerator to make a great salad. Go ahead and buy a bottle dressing if you want, if you don't want to make your own. But I'd keep Caesar on the back burner, or when you go to that lovely steakhouse once or twice a year. Next slide. So we've talked a little bit about meat, but some of the leaner meats, if you really love beef, I buy flank steak. Flank steak is almost no fat. I marinate it overnight with a little bit of oil and actually a little bit of soy sauce to give it flavor, and then I grill it up. You can see that prime rib, all the fat. So when you see the white fat in the meat, that's what it's doing to your arteries. And that shows you that that's like a cold piece of meat. Once it's heated, it seems, more tender. You don't think it's doing that damage. But what you want is lean meat, like flank steak, filet mignon, top sirloin. Those are lean cuts. And if not, you're always better bet to go to poultry or fish. And in terms of skin, the skin is delicious, especially on chicken thighs or when you're doing a nice barbecue. But the skin adds a lot of extra fat, cholesterol, saturated fat. So even the skin of salmon, and I was surprised to learn this, I love crispy salmon skin, but that also becomes more of a saturated fat. So better off not eating the skin even on fish. Next. So fresh fruit, sorbet versus cake or ice cream. We talked about that. Sorbets are great because they're made with fruit, ice. There is sugar, of course, but ice cream is made with cream and eggs, and they are delicious, but there's a lot of cholesterol, and we tend to gain weight pretty quickly on ice cream. I mean, that shows you about 5 scoops there. I don't know if somebody's actually eating all that, but keep in mind that a half a cup of ice cream can be about 250 calories. If you do Ben and Jerry's, it's probably 350. But the sorbets come in at 60 to 80 calories for a serving. So it's a nice way to have a nice frozen feel and cold flavor taste in your mouth without all the damage. Next slide. So which 3 would you pick here? I should ask Maureen, would you have a strawberry with a strawberry with chocolate dip, a brownie, or fruitcake? Which one do you think, Maureen?
Well, I think I know what the right answer is. I'm not as much of a fan of fruitcake, but I would do the strawberries for a little bit of sweet and a little bit of health.
Exactly. The strawberries with dipped dark chocolate is your #1 bet. Brownies, not so much, but the fruit cake is really deceiving. We hear fruit and we hear cake and we go, that's got to be good. The problem is the dried fruit, a lot of that has got extra color, and they use almost like a corn syrup, a buttercream and sugar syrup to make that cake. It's made with all white flour, not very nutritious. Yes, it can last 6 months, but you know what? You're better off having those delicious strawberries dipped in a little bit of chocolate. Next slide. Apple cider versus eggnog. Apple cider is just mashed apples that are fermented. It's pretty good. It tastes great. Eggnog may be delicious, but there's cream, there's eggs, there's sugar, and you always have to ask if it's been pasteurized because you don't want to eat anything containing raw eggs. And again, you know what I'm saying. I don't want to be the person that says, don't do this, only do this. I'm just saying that when you're given a choice, somebody's serving me an eggnog, I'm at a party and they're not serving me anything else, I'll always be a polite guest, take it and take a couple sips and then leave it to the side. If I get an apple cider, I'll probably finish the whole thing. So that's another thing you can do. Next slide. Portion control. Now, of course, the larger one looks a lot more exciting. One of the things that I started to do is offer smaller plates, not small, but smaller plates. I even did that when my kids come over because they always complain Sunday night when they leave my home. I make about 10 different items that they're so full they have a food hangover the next morning. So I bought actually slightly smaller plates. Instead of 9 or 10 inch, I bought 8 inch. It made a difference on what they put on their plate. And what you want to do, and we'll talk about a buffet soon, is ultimately start with the healthier choices to fill your plate and then move on to those little indulgences that you like. Next slide. Which brings me to Canada's food guide. So this food guide came out in 2019. My latest book called Meal Revolution, I've now written 21 books, all deals with Canada's food guide. So if you were familiar before, it had 4 food groups, remember? Now there's only 3. So take a look at that plate. That plate is what you're going to visualize in terms of what ultimately your breakfast, lunch, and dinner plate should look like. So have some imagination. Half of it should be either vegetables and or fruit. A quarter of it should be grains, and that's going to be whole grains. And another quarter should be protein. But Canada's food guide is saying, no longer are we giving you a milk and a meat category. We're putting protein all into the same group. So that means eggs, nuts, tofu, meat, fish, chicken. And they're trying to edge us and push us a little more towards a heavier plant-based diet. One, we know it's healthier, reduces chronic disease, and it's way better for our environment. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about what your plate should look like. Next slide. Now, this specifically is called the Mind Diet. I work with an organization called Memory Morsels, and this is just a great organization dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's as we age. And they're showing that diet plays a very significant part. So if you look carefully at that diagram, I'm not sure if you can see it, but at the very top is whole grain. So again, no carb bashing here. Next are nuts. Then we have chicken, fish, even red wine. Then we have, as you come down, butter and cheese in smaller amounts and pastries in small amounts. This diet has been proven to reduce the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's by 53%, also lowering the risk of chronic disease. So this is a diet that now I'm actually following, and I'm even encouraging my children who are much younger to follow this diet, because as you know, disease does not start from the minute you hit that buffet table next week. It starts from when we're in our 20s or 30s. How our children eat is very, very important. Okay, and let's look now at some final guidelines before I open it up to some questions. So, next slide. The first thing we're going to do is plan ahead. I know for me, when I go out to someone's wedding, I went to a wedding last week, and I said, okay, I just know it's going to be a really heavy duty meal. I don't want a food hangover. I don't want to feel like I've had too much to drink. So I was very careful the day before, and the day of, I ate very lightly, but enough. I didn't starve. I ate just enough so that I'd come hungry to the wedding, but not overeat. And a little bit of exercise can't hurt you when you're planning ahead. Next slide. Something we tend to do if we know we're going to somebody's home for dinner. Aunt Jean has invited us for dinner and we know how much food she prepares. We skip our meals, right? You know, you get up, you go, I'm not eating all day. I'm only going to eat tonight because I know what she's going to prepare. So you don't want to do that, because there's something, I love the term, it's called you get very hangry. It's not hungry, it's angry and hungry at once. And I see my children's blood sugar drop when they get hungry. Also, when you don't eat, you skip meals, it actually doesn't increase your appetite. You notice when you skip meals, you actually suppress your appetite. All of a sudden you say, hey, I can go without food. I'm not really hungry. Not a good thing. You get fatigued. Your blood pressure starts to get low, which means you could lose your balance. It slows your metabolism. So if you're overweight and you're trying to lose weight, skipping meals does the actual opposite of what you want to be doing. You want to maintain a regular meal schedule on the days that you're going to go out somewhere. Just eat a little bit less, or forego, the desserts or the heavy breads that day. Next slide. And I always like to have a nibble of either a salad, a soup, a little snack, as you can see there on your right, just before I go out, like 2-3 hours before I head out the door, because chances are you're not going to eat right when you get there, and just have a little more nutrition to keep your energy up and dampen your appetite. Next slide. And eat slower. We all wolf our food down. They always say it takes 20 minutes until you feel full. It's true, but actually I think it takes longer. Sometimes if I come in the door and I haven't eaten in enough time, I eat way too much. And 20 minutes isn't an hour later is when I feel, oh my God, did I overdo it? So quick eating also causes indigestion, which we don't need, especially when we have rich foods. So you want to eat slowly and socialize. I love to sit down with people and eat because it's all about finding out what's going on, especially since COVID, and we are getting together more now. It's a joy, and make food the secondary. Make it the second base, not the first. Next slide. And buffets. Buffets, I believe, are finally open. So what I always do again is I start with a healthier choice. It may not be as much fun. I fill my plate first with the things that, I say, oh, I really would rather dig into that, ribeye right now. But I start with some healthier just to get my appetite going. And I look at the buffet. I have a good overview, like a bird's eye view on what's on there, what I should be attacking, what I shouldn't be, and then leave room for indulgences, like you see the smaller plate there on the right. Next slide. And we're going to limit our alcohol. Why? Do you know our tolerance decreases as we age? I found when I went to this wedding a week ago, I had a glass and a half of wine the whole night. I was not walking straight. I mean, I've never been a drinker at all, but I do find that as I'm aging, I don't tolerate it as well. Excess alcohol also can build plaque in our brain, and it can be high in calories and sugar. And it dehydrates you, and it can lead to inflammation, which can worsen your arthritis or your back pain. So studies show that 1 drink per day for women, red wine is always a better choice, 2 for men, and if you have 3 drinks daily, 3 times the risk of dementia for people that drink on a daily basis. Next slide. And you want to make water the beverage of choice. Now, plain tap water is a little boring. I'm drinking something here called SodaStream. If you don't want to pay the money for Perrier or Pellegrino, I have a SodaStream. I bubble it myself. I love it. Then I stick tons of lemons or limes or orange slices in, and it really tastes very, very good. And I love it ice cold. So get used to drinking water throughout your day. That will keep you hydrated. It will give you the energy you need if you're feeling fatigued. It also lubricates your joints, and it becomes delicious to you. You find that you won't want to be drinking. Please don't drink the diet drinks or sodas. Next slide. And again, you're going to see I'm a dessert nut. I always have to have more desserts in on slides. Make room for dessert. Have a small piece. Try not to go back for seconds. And what I might do at a dinner party is just avoid the delicious sourdough bread or, all the olives and crackers at the beginning, and save it for dessert. Next slide. And this is a rule that I love to follow. 80-20, depends how good I am, 90-10. 80% of the time, stay in charge of what you're doing. Be mindful. You should never feel deprived. People that feel deprived and go on diets never can maintain their weight. You go on a diet and you go off a diet. Eating well, whether you're at parties, whether you're on a cruise ship, wherever you are, is about enjoying yourself, but 80% of the time you're still eating mindfully. Going away or going to buffet doesn't mean, hey, I'm gonna, eat everything I can right now because I've got a chance to. It's all about saying, I'm gonna indulge a little bit and then tomorrow go back on track. So the 80-20 rule really works for me. Sunday nights, I tend to overdo it with my kids there. I have more dessert than I should. The good thing is when you're eating well, the 80-20 rule works because Monday morning, I never feel as well. I'm paying a price for eating more, but it is worth it for that one day. Next slide. And we can't go without saying exercise. Exercise has got to be built into your schedule. It doesn't mean you have to be doing specific walking, jogging, exercise classes. No, it just means you have to move. So even if you're tidying up your home, your apartment, it promotes digestion. It increases your energy. It burns calories. It increases your metabolism so you can eat more. Your immunity is improved when you exercise. Your bone density is improved. It lowers the risk of Alzheimer's and dementia, and it can prevent obesity. So too many reasons out there why you should exercise. And everybody has time. I mean, okay, I got a dog. Maybe you shouldn't do that because that's a lot of work. But ultimately, find a way. And I'm looking outside now and it's raining and it doesn't look very pretty out there. But even on bad days, I just bundle up. They say there's no such thing as bad weather. There's just poor dressing. And I believe that because I can go out with a rain jacket and I'll take my pup out probably after we finish today. Will it be as pleasant as sunny and warm? No, but I won't get wet. I just really built up in my clothing. Next slide. Actually, I think that's one of our final slides. Most importantly, I hope I didn't put a damper on anything for you, but it's really enjoying the holidays with your loved ones. Socialize, enjoy life, take it all in, and just be mindful. Have that little part of your brain always just looking at what you're doing. Next slide, and then we can open it up to questions.
Great, thank you, Rose. I just want to open it up to everybody again. If you have any questions for Rose, please feel free to type it into the chat, and we'll take the questions from there. So our first question is, what is your take on intermittent fasting as we age?
You know, it works for many people. It depends how many hours you're going to go. I find that I will eat last at around 7 o'clock, and then I go right until I wake up very early in the morning. I might have just an apple at 5 in the morning, then I don't eat till 11. So that is a form of intermittent fasting. I find I do well on it. The problem is when you're aging, if you go too long without food, you may lack energy, and that will fatigue you. So I'm more, I think as you age, I'd rather see people eating every 2-3 hours, something to build up that energy in your body, depending on your age and how fit you are.
Okay, thank you. And another question is looking at the younger age set, any tips on how to get kids ages 2 to 5 to eat more vegetables and really start off that lifelong habit early?
Yeah, you know, it's funny you say that because this weekend, if you listen in, I think Saturday or Sunday on 680 News, I'm talking about how to feed your kids healthy. So there you go. You know, raising 4 kids myself, I didn't want it to be a battleground, but every day they saw on the table what we ate, and it was there for them. So every night, no matter what, I had vegetables, I had fruit, I had good food there. If they really didn't want to eat, I had some pasta and tomato sauce for them. That was it. I didn't make 4 different dinners. Slowly but surely, I must say today, my children are aged now 37 down to 29. They're all great eaters. Now, not to say I didn't have fights with them and that I didn't want to encourage them with Smarties to eat their vegetables, but I tried desperately not to make it a big issue, but to say, look, I'm not a short order cook. This is what we're eating. And you have to be the role model. If you're eating poorly, you're really overweight, you're not exercising, you cannot expect your children to be doing anything different. So I'm kind of tough on that if you're a good role model, they may not get it right away, but I promise you, I can now look back and having 4 grandchildren, even my youngest are twin 7-year-olds, they eat well, they exercise all the time, they're on the slim frame, which is always better than the other. And my daughter raised them just presenting the foods that her and her husband ate.
That's great. As a follow-up, and maybe again, we'll balance for both kids and maybe for people who are a little bit older. But what kinds of nuts or cheeses do you recommend? Are there different types that you would say are better for kids versus seniors, or what's your thought on that?
Nuts and cheeses. So again, yes. Even with hard cheeses like brie cheese and Parmesan, these are delicious cheeses with a lot of great flavor. I never let my kids indulge in excess cheese just because we had a history of high cholesterol and heart disease, and I was a little concerned. But as a snack, I wouldn't let it be a meal. I'd let them have a small, Baby Bell, an ounce of cheese with some whole grain crackers or some whole grain bread. I'd let them do that. And in terms of nuts, any nuts they enjoyed. I mean, all nuts are healthy. Probably some of the healthiness are walnuts. Almonds are great. But again, for kids, I don't count the number of nuts. I'm not worried about them getting overweight by eating too many nuts. It's too heart healthy. It's a great protein. It's a plant-based protein. Lots of fiber, gives them lots of energy. That I'll notice my twin granddaughters, they have a handful of nuts and all of a sudden their energy and mood comes right up. So nuts I feel good about. Like peanut butter, any nut butter is the best for kids.
That's great. What about, so if you were, if any of us are looking at tweaking our recipes as we get towards the holidays,
Mhm.
is there anywhere, I know you've got recipes on your website. Do you have alternatives on there for those of us who might be looking to enjoy our favorites, but maybe tweak a little bit?
Oh yeah, well, Maureen, I mean, that's really what I'm all about. So every recipe I've ever produced has always been with those tweaks. So you'll notice in my books, you won't see cream, you won't see a dozen eggs in a recipe, you won't see butter. I will use oil for every recipe and it turns out brilliantly. Instead of cream, believe it or not, I make a great fettuccine Alfredo sauce with 2% evaporated milk. So throughout my book, or if you just go on my website, take a look, you'll see the recipes and how I tweak. So when I make a great graham crust for a cheesecake, I don't use sometimes calling for a third or a half a cup of butter to hold it together. I use a little bit of oil and water, and that holds it together beautifully.
That's great. Okay, good to know. So we'll be checking out your website a little bit more. So another question is, are there any packaged foods that you feel might be better than others? Looking at convenience of meal preparation and, meal prep and eating versus cooking from scratch with
Right.
fresh ingredients. What's
Absolutely. What you want to do is brand names I'm not sure of. I know Annie's, it's a kid's product more for mac and cheese. She builds great packaged box foods without a lot of sodium or fat. But what you want to learn to do, and it's not hard, is to read a label. So sometimes marketing can be brilliant, and they will market it being low fat, low cholesterol, low in calories, and you go, this is what Rose is talking about. And you buy it. And what you find out later, somebody shows you, Mom, whatever, this is so much sodium. You have saturated fats in your, but honey, it said low this, low. So you have to learn to read a label. And I wouldn't worry about calories per serving. You want to look at sodium. How much sodium is in one serving? You really don't want over 300 milligrams of sodium in one serving. So many soups have 600 to 800 per serving. When you go to a fast food restaurant, usually an individual fast food meal easily has 1,200, your daily intake for sodium. Next, you want to look at the fat. If it's good fat like oils and nuts, don't worry about it, but you look at the saturated fat. How much saturated fat is there in that product? So I like to look at how much protein, like I buy a Greek yogurt that's got so much protein it fills me like a piece of meat. When you buy the yogurts, usually like the Dannons with the fruit syrup in it, there's almost no protein in it. So you have to learn to, and feel free to email me if you'd like me to just give you a simple label and what to look for. I'd be happy to do that. You want to look for the fat, the saturated fat, how much protein. If you're looking for your bowels and digestion, you want to look at fiber. So it all depends what you're looking for, but reading a label is number one. I'll never buy the marketing from the front cover of a product.
Okay. Would you say the same thing for salad dressings? I know earlier in the presentation you said it's okay to buy them if you want, but yeah.
So the kind of dressings I buy is I avoid the creamy. They usually have usually the general brands like Kraft have a lot of additives and artificial ingredients. I would tend to buy an oil vinaigrette because the oil is heart healthy. You're not getting any bad ingredients. It's probably just vinegar, lemon juice, oil, and herbs. So those ones, just be careful not to kill your salad and drench it. Because when you drench it, you got more calories in that salad than the filet mignon and potatoes. So I would buy an olive oil vinaigrette, which is going to be a lot healthier and better for you than the creamy ones.
Okay, great. I don't see any other questions coming into the chat box. Maybe we'll just give it a second before we wrap things up in case anybody has a question they're typing in, and I'll bring this up. So
always interested in your own issues that you have around holiday dinners or getting together with friends to eat, what concerns you most.
Mm-hmm. And here up on the screen now are also all the ways that you can either follow Rose or find her. So,
if you look on Instagram now, there's a great section I'm just doing on the different mushrooms that we eat and how to use them. And there's so many varieties of mushrooms. You've got to try them besides the button mushrooms. There's just so many delicious mushrooms that are so healthy for you.
Yeah. We have a couple more questions in.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on vegan replacement foods with things like Eve's sausages?
Okay, so good question there. Personally, I don't like a vegan diet unless there's health reasons. I think it's too extreme. It counts out too many foods, and you end up buying a lot of packaged goods that are not so healthy for you. So the Eve's products do have a lot of sodium, do have a lot of extra, ingredients added that probably aren't necessary. I'd rather go vegan by, either doing like a light coconut milk, using nuts, pure tofu, edamame. Those I love. The packaged ones tend to want to flavor it so much that they're adding a lot of stuff in for you that you don't need in your diet, and mostly sodium.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, what are your suggestions for an alternative to stuffing?
Oh, that's great. I actually made a turkey for Thanksgiving a few weeks ago. And you mean in terms of probably a bread stuffing, right?
Yeah.
I did a brown and wild rice stuffing, and I put dried fruit in and some nuts and just like lemon juice and extra virgin olive oil and some herbs. It was so good. It made you feel better than eating that bready, heavy stuffing. So just use grains. I mean, if you like quinoa, if you haven't used quinoa, try that as a grain, especially if you have any gluten-free guests.
That's great. Do you have a recipe online that people can
Yeah, if
find
you
for
look
something
at,
like
I
that?
think the wild rice pilaf. I think
Okay.
that's what it's called. That's a recipe I use. It's delicious with dried fruit and nuts. Really nice.
Great. Oh, thank you. And a very lovely comment from Corrine. Not a question, but she wanted to say that she's followed you for years and has made many of your recipes and wants to
Right.
thank you for sharing all of your knowledge.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for joining in.
What about meat substitutes like Beyond Meat? Are they any healthier than having steak or a burger?
You know what? Ultimately, they've shown that they're very similar in calories and fat. I guess from, again, an environmental point of view, it's healthier. I have used it. I've used the Beyond, I think it's Beyond Meat. Is that it? I've used the burgers. I've tried the ground Beyond Meat. It tastes very, very good. But if you really think you're doing yourself a savings in calories, and especially sodium, there is more sodium, you're not, but it's definitely a better vegetable-based plant diet than eating meat all the time, for sure.
Okay, thank you. Well, it looks like that's the end of the questions for today. Everybody is thanking you for all of your insights and information. And I'd like to thank you as well. It's always so great to be on these webinars with you, Rose. Your information that you share is so valuable. So thank you again for taking the time today. And
No
thanks to
problem.
everybody who took the time to join us today.
And
for all of your questions as well.
And if there's any questions, please, Facebook, or you can email me if you have any concerns, because I know it's a lot of information for what I give you, and I'm never sure if everybody's be able to, no pun intended, digest everything.
Yes, that's great. Okay, well, thank you again.
Thank you,
and
Maureen.
enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. We
Yeah,
look
let's
forward
hope we
to
don't get
seeing you
snow
again.
tomorrow.
Yes.
Thank you,
All the
Maureen. You
best.
too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.